it turns yellow. So I know right away I've got the
Oh,
wrong.
I see. Oh, that's strange.
It's one of Pedro's. In addition to being talented in lots of different ways, he's very good with Snapchat lens filters, lens configuration. So he's got a bunch of things, and so I've plugged those in back before Zoom lets you do like fancy backgrounds and WebEx. So he's got a lot of fun filters.
Hello, guys.
Hey, Johnny.
Hey, Johnny.
How are you doing?
I should get an earthquake filter, which just moves the background slightly behind me.
Yeah, you should have it. You know what you could do? I saw this previously, that you could record yourself bringing yourself a cup of tea, and then have that as the background.
Ah.
Really freak
and
people out.
Don't mention anything about it, and just confuse the entire group.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I think we're going to be a reduced group today because John is doing. I forgot what he's doing, but he's giving a talk. And I think we also had from Neil that he was not coming today. I can't remember what he said exactly. So so this might be it. So to start off, anybody have anything they want to discuss today before we jump into anything in particular?
I don't know if we need to talk about hosting, more like that, IoT, stuff like that. If that's a conversation for this or for later.
Well, if we can talk about hosting, I would love to talk about MQTT if that's an option, because I know that Václav and Adrian were dealing with that recently as well.
Yeah, for sure. We should discuss that. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so the problem that we're facing is that until Watson IoT becomes an open source solution, and we haven't got a date on that yet, it's sort of out of our price range. And even if we can find a way to pay for it, it will only be a temporary solution because we want projects to last for years, and we can't afford $2,500 every month. So the question then is, what alternatives can we do? My initial idea was Mosquito, and then anyone who knows about Mosquito told me that it wasn't the right solution, because whilst that might be fine for a home network or 50 devices, as you scale up, it becomes very difficult to. It's not a very scalable solution. So then the next solution that I looked at was VernMQ, which was suggested to me by Mark Radbourne from Microsoft, who's an IoT specialist there. And he said that it was, in his opinion, one of the best standard MQTT implementations, in that it has all the standard MQTT stuff, but it's very, very scalable and it uses multi-threading, etc. So I created a version of that with certificates and it worked well. That's where I left off. And then I think, Adrian, you've done some work recently on this.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, it's a little quiet.
So, well, I mean, I took the VernMQ, Dockerized it, and I put it on Kubernetes. So that works. It's about as complex as bringing up the MQTT that it was originally up. But the part that makes it scalable is where the complexity comes into play, right? But I would agree with that assessment that you just said about VernMQ being more scalable or production ready. It works very well with Kubernetes so far from what I've seen. I'm having a decent time with it outside of the fact that it's just a pain in the butt to get it to work with a regular host URL. So I got it working with a load balancer, so it's a hash URL. But I'm trying to get it to work with something like mqtt.openeew.com. But for some reason, that route is not working.
Have you looked at the listeners?
Yeah, it seems pretty good. The doc is great, even though it seems like it hasn't been updated in a couple of years. It's still pretty accurate. And just as a FY for you, that's actually, VernMQ is actually a sole product, right? So you can get the free one and use it as you want, but there's a paid subscription as well. So you may want to look into that. Maybe there may be things that are beneficial to doing that.
And just as a thought, have you, in the configuration file for VernMQ, I spent a long time getting the listeners right.
I can see your mouth moving, Andy, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, I think, Adrian, I don't know if you can hear us, but we can hear you, but I can hear Andy.
I can't hear
Okay, sorry, I thought nothing was coming out of my mouth suddenly. Yeah, a lot of noise over there, wherever you are.
Oh, okay. All right. Now I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say that in the configuration file for VernMQ, you can specify the listeners, right? And that's where you put the URLs that you're going to use.
Well, so their doc says that they you could do it, like you could do TLS termination and things like that through VernMQ, but if you use Kubernetes, they actually push you to go down the egress path.
Okay.
So I was trying to do that. I mean, you have to open up the WebSocket, and so they have a automated configuration through Helm, and I ran that, and I also did it manually myself, and everything seems like it's working, but I still can't connect from my laptop to the WebSocket path, unfortunately. So,
and I've got a question for you, because I know next to nothing about Kubernetes, but what would happen if we're hosting everything? If one thing is taking up more resources, does it take away from another thing? Like, would our VernMQ cluster be starved of resources if something else was taking them at the time? How do we protect it from
well,
that?
you can set up multiple workers and also multiple clusters. So right now we have the two clusters. There's the regional and there's the core. So the core has the dashboard, most of the microservices, and then device management. And then the regionals are they're going to have seismology, and then they could have VernMQ. I would say that we may want to consider having a cluster just for VernMQ, because that ends up being, if we move to that path, that ends up being like the most important part, because that's where how all of us are going to be communicating together, and that's where most of the data is going to be moving around. And of course, bringing up a cluster it's like $70 or something. I mean, you have to look at the building. It's not that expensive to have a standalone cluster. We could also go down the path of having multiple workers on a cluster. The reason why I'll push for a separate cluster is because there's like a single point of failure logic here, right? If the one regional cluster goes down and you have your MQTT and seismology on there, everybody's down. So if you separate it, then if something goes down, only a piece of the system is going down. That makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. And that stuff. So you did some work with MQTT recently, right? Getting your detection system running.
Yeah, it's actually running right now. So what I did, I redirected those Mexican stations through this MQTT. So I subscribed to your Mexican MQTT, and I'm sending it to this one, and I'm now running all these. I'm running the seismology scripts, and I'm running those AWS and IBM dump scripts. So it's running about half a day at my computer, and I have about 15 STA LTA detections per hour.
Oh, that's awesome. Here's a question for you. Did you have to do a lot of work to reformat the JSON?
No, it was very little. I can't tell you right now like what I had to do with that, but it was just 1 line or 2 lines of adjustment. So it was very, very easy. So yeah, and so far I had no earthquake. I had like 1 event that was defined by 2 detections. So that could have been like a small earthquake, but the catalog from the Mexican network is not out yet for today, because magnitude smaller than 4s are not live on their webpage. So I don't really know. It could have been an earthquake. It could have been just a coincidence. But I would be kind of like, that's what the system is supposed to do, to like not have these coincidences.
Well, yesterday we had a 10-gal event on one of the sensors. You can see it here. You can always refer to the Twitter and see. In fact, I'm going to sign you up, Asa, so you can get alerts on your email from the Twitter when we.
Oh yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah. So otherwise, I've been running it through the MQTT, and the new MQTT works well, but it's just like, especially with this Mexican data, it's far more data. Like we would reach the 200 megabyte limit in absolutely no time. So we definitely need this.
Okay. But that's pretty exciting. So what you've managed to do then is run the whole system from data ingress to detection output on your laptop.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it runs well. So far, I mean.
And it also connects to Cloudant. Did you do that part as well?
Yeah. So it says to Cloudant. So there are it's 3 services right now, or 4 services. Like, one is subscribing to a Mexican MQTT and sending it to our new MQTT. And then there are 3 services. One is seismology that does all that work. And then it publishes detections and events. And then there are two microservices, one that subscribes for traces and saves all the traces to AWS as free. And the second one subscribes to detections and events and saves to Cloudant. So yeah, this runs end to end. Like, I'm sure that there's going to be plenty of problems that will require like tweaking and adjustments of codes and stuff like that. But yeah, it works end to end right now. So I hope to get some data that I'll be.
And where in AWS can we see the data that you're writing?
So it is in the Gria OpenEEW, and then there's test traces.
Test traces, got you.
Test traces and JSON.
And you got Milliseed as well.
Yeah, well, the thing is with Miniseed is that it's just a matter of one click to enable Miniseed and like to upload the Miniseed too. But right now I'm not doing Miniseed because it doubles up the amount of upload data. So I think that in future we can just move that Miniseed code to Lambda function in AWS and do it in that place, because otherwise, like I would be uploading twice as much data and it would be slowing down the algorithm on my computer or on any like computer that the microservice is going to run on. So if we don't have a problem with this, like we can have it.
Yeah,
there.
well, actually, what we can do, so the AWS, so it wouldn't make sense to run that Lambda on the Grio AWS account, because then we would only be getting the Grio data. What we can do is we can ask AWS if they will let us run that on the OpenEEW account, which is solely for this. So then we're just transforming data in one bucket into another bucket.
Yeah. I think that's probably, I would say, a better solution. But
okay,
yeah.
Hey, congrats! That's really exciting. Very good.
Yeah, I mean, let's see if it works. Like so far, like we had no earthquakes, so yeah,
good stuff. I also thought I'd mention to everyone here that I started working on the wiki. So if you guys have any comments at all, please let me know. We just had a discussion with Daniel and John about this, and Ryan, how we're going to restructure the documentation of everything. But we can talk about that more in our dashboard meeting. But anyway, just until then, if you guys have a second to go through the thing, I'd really appreciate any comments that you might have. And just put yourself in the shoes of someone who's just got a sensor. Does this make sense to me? Are these the right things for me?
Is that a possible? Well, I suppose it would be to go through it without actually having a sensor.
Yeah, just as it makes any sense logically. But maybe also we should also be catering for people who don't have sensors. And you come to this and you want to understand the web app and what it does. So maybe there should be some discussions there.
Yeah. Yeah, seems good.
Yeah. Anything else? So do you guys, Johnny, Ryan, do you want to talk about anything sort of dashboard related?
Not really. Is there anything that has to be done yet?
I mean, yeah, there's a whole. I mean, there are a bunch of issues in GitHub. You can grab any one of them if you want. As far as the front end is concerned, there's the little stuff that we talked about and whatnot. That the little sort of, as Kristen would say, the fit and finish parts. But the big thing is the website, right? Which I know we've been talking about for quite some time now, but it's taking shape. So I definitely think there'll be stuff to do with that if you want to wait for that to come around.
Yeah, sounds good.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so the dashboard is, I'm approaching what I would call version 0.8.0, because I think we're at 0.7.1 right now, and it'll be a fairly big one. I think it's going to add a few exciting features to it. So here, let me share my screen.
You guys don't hear my fan, do you?
No fan.
Do you have a fan in the room?
Yeah, right here.
Oh.
I would know just from the audio.
Okay, cool.
I thought it was maybe the laptop didn't like React.
Yeah, no.
Spinning up.
No, I'm on a PC or a Mac, but it's a PC-ish Mac.
All right, so this is this has been the dashboard before, but we now have the ability to. I don't know if I can grab my sensor. So if I'm scared to touch my sensor at this point because I didn't realize that that when you touch it, it starts sending 5 minutes of acceleration data up to up to the cloud. So, but I'm gonna grab it here because I can show you the Václav. Hopefully this doesn't simulate an earthquake.
Well, but it probably doesn't have the right endpoint right now, right? Or does it?
So where would this be? Yeah, so when it sends the acceleration data, this is still being sent to the detection algorithms, right? Or have we not set that up yet?
No. Like it, as long as you use the new endpoint that Andy and Adrian created yesterday, that would go to the detection algorithms, and I would love to see your data. That would be actually quite exciting for me too. But I think that you probably don't have a firmware with the right endpoint right now, right?
Yeah, that's on the provision. So the provisioning process in Node Red, I think, is what provides the endpoint. I might be wrong there.
Oh, okay.
And that can be changed quite easily, but that's still pointing to something else.
Well, the cool thing now in version, building off of what Johnny did on the front end, it now checks GitHub to see if you are up to date with your firmware or not. So it pulls the releases from the firmware repository and then determines if you're up to date or not. And so,
Is that client or server side?
What's that?
Is that client or server side?
Client.
Okay.
The API calls are made from the client. So if I change this arbitrarily to like 1.5.2, and then modify this, it'll say that there's a new firmware version available,
cool.
and you'll be able to. Now I don't know actually how we're going to download it, the new firmware version. I don't know if you have to manually do it. It seemed like mine, which I have a lot of questions about how this works still, but it seemed like mine updated to 1.5.1. Without really doing anything.
So the John had created in the firmware a couple of topics, MQTT topics that it subscribes to, and one of those topics, if I'm not mistaken, is an OTA topic. So either on startup, it will automatically check if there's a new firmware and do it itself, but alternatively, from the server, we can send an MQTT message on that topic, and it will update. So this button here could trigger that MQTT message.
Yeah, and I was going to ask John that if there is a topic, and so if there is one, then that's good to know because that button will actually work, and you don't have to do any other features to it, but or anything else to it. But the other thing is there's a whole backend MQTT connection now. So if I press the test sensor button, it will actually start testing the sensor from the dashboard, which is kind of cool. And the other two are one entry of a topic away of working also, and then when it stops, the test sensor button goes off. So version 0.8.0 hopefully will be a little more something that you actually can interact with your sensor with on the dashboard, which I think will be cool. The goal is to make the dashboard useful. I think that's kind of a big step in that direction because now you can actually now you can actually interact with it from here.
So I take it these sensors are not displayed on the map yet.
They are. They're right here.
Right, but that's less than what's in the table, though, is it?
It is because there's a lot in Mexico City and New Jersey.
Huh.
There's this dot probably right. This is Andy's sensors here, and there are a lot of them. There are a few of them in Mexico City.
And it only shows one.
No, I know, but that circle is just. I think there's just multiple of those circles on top of each other.
Do you have Czech Republic in there? Do you have my two sensors of that version?
We do, but so here's the.
Cool.
So we have at least one, but here's the issue that we have with the dashboard right now is that these records, which I'm not sure where they come from, we don't know No one knows where they come from. So
From 51 years ago, obviously.
it showed up. It's like an alien spacecraft that like showed up 51 years ago that ends up on our dashboard. Something went wrong with the provisioning process, and it gave us these. Until I put a new PR in, the current dashboard breaks because these records break the table, and then it just refused to load all the data. So as part of version 0.8.0 also is a whole nother, like a lot more error handling to be able to, so that things don't break just because there's some bad data. But the data coming into it is still incorrect, and John and I have to figure out where exactly in the provisioning process it's causing that bad data to pop up.
How does that even work? Like 50, are we using a library to display the time deltas, or did we do that ourselves?
No, I put it. We use a library called, I think, Time Ago to handle that.
Because who in their right mind would handle 51 years?
So I don't even know. That's
Display it
the.
correctly.
So actually, Johnny, if you want to work on something, the way those dates are handled is very duct taped together. It's like I'm just basically comparing the string and seeing if like it's more than 1 day ago, but it doesn't use any of JavaScript's date functionality to do that. And that's to say if it's green or yellow circle on here. So if you do want to do something with the dashboard before the OpenEEW.com site is ready to work on.
Oh, is that error handling right there?
Yeah, so then that's the error handling that we also have a like whole toast system. So now we have like a notification system within the dashboard that'll be able to, and Johnny, if you want to mess around with that, that's just in context here. I have a add toast, and you can just fire off that function, and you can add a toast to this like dashboard wide notification system. Yeah. So this is all coming soon.
But just a question: do we from the API get an actual usable integer, or do we get 6 days ago, literally?
We get a usable integer, but I don't know how this is even. I don't want to
get a React moment.
Because I don't see why we'd have to compare strings if we have the numbers.
Yeah, well, we have the string because we need something human readable for the table. But that's what I'm saying is that it's actually comparing the string. It's doing it in not a very good way.
So it's just that it's not doing it in a good way because it's not doing it in a good way, or because it was not currently set up to use integers yet.
Both. Because it's basically it's not a good way because we're not using the integers. And
but they are there.
They are there, yeah. They're there when they come in from the database, but then to make it I don't need to get in the code, but to make it a human readable string, it's converted to
and then you lose the number, right?
And then you lose the number, but this little circle is based on the string, not the actual integer comparison.
I think I know what's going on, right? So what I did anyway, I don't know how much the code changed since then, is I had a little for each, or a little map, I think it was, that would map the data to something human readable. And then you probably use that to determine what to draw, which circle to draw. Is that correct?
I mean, yeah, that's what it was. I don't know if I changed it out for our library. So yeah, Daniel, to answer your question, I don't think we use Moment, but I think I use some other library that just handles. It's I think a smaller library that just handles like converting to a human readable date. But Johnny, you said you had written something for that, so maybe I just used that.
Did I?
I don't know. It was a little while ago.
I don't remember saying that.
Well, anyway, if you want to look at something, you can look at that. If not, I can
did
go in and change it
recently.
later.
I think it shouldn't be too hard to give something reasonable, but I feel like using a library might also not be that big of a deal. But what I think I'll do to fix that bug, to fix not the bug, but the bodge, is what I'll if I understand the way the code works correctly, just add another field in there. Although I can't do that because then it would also render the field. God damn it.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we don't have to. Well, we can talk more about it in the dashboard meeting. But yeah, if you did want to like look into it, that's something you could do. But anyway, that's version 0.8 whatever that's going to come out soon.
That looks great, Ryan. That's very nice.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the sensors page is looking cool. And then I'm dipping into my events page data visualization week here because I thought this would be done by now. But after this, then Václav, it's on to seeing how much of that data we can get onto the events page.
I have one more question to this the device table in Cloudant, because I would like to merge the Mexican stations with the new stations, or with these like current sensors. How much is that still, like, how much of work do you think that there is still on that device table in Cloudant? Are the columns or like the categories going to change, or is it pretty much all final and it just needs some polishing to like removing those sensors that are badly provisioned like mine and stuff like that?
Well, from what I know, outside the fact that there's some sort of issue that's creating these bad entries into it, the entries that are created by the current provisioning process should be good to go and should be what we use from here on out. But I think we do need one more property that will say what network each one of the sensors belongs to. And so we haven't added that yet, but everything else should be the same.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I can think about that one, and then maybe we can discuss this, and then I can merge the device tables.
I suspect that stuff that for Mexican, there might be some of those fields that would be empty because we can't query the devices in the way that we do with the other ones.
Yeah, you are right. Yeah,
but that's like firmware version and stuff like that. But we don't care. We don't care.
It should not matter that much because those categories that I need for the algorithms, they are like the same for and it's just the latitude, longitude, and ID. So like that's another thing, like that we don't that we are using the Mac ID as a device ID, and we were discussing whether we want to have something human readable for devices or not. So I don't know if we reached a conclusion. I think that we probably reached a conclusion that we want to have them at some point in the future, but I don't think that we have really discussed that, how to do that, or whether we want to include that in MVP, and like for now we can just use the Mac ID.
It doesn't seem like hugely important to me, at least, but I do know that with Particle, for example, and some other similar stuff, like for example, like this light you see behind me, I just built it on the weekend. I 3D printed it actually, but I use this really awesome open source firmware called something WLED. And once you provision it, they have their own app and everything. It's really great. You then it asks for its name. So I've now got one, and I got one in my kids' room as well. And you sort of name it, and it's useful to have names because then I know which one I'm looking at when I'm on my dashboard. So I can turn off my kids' one. I can turn off this one. I know which one they are.
You can turn off your kids?
I can turn off my kids, if only. Is that what you said? If only.
I actually have something very similar. If you see it.
Oh, there you go. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. Is that Nanoleaf?
Yeah, it's Nanoleaf.
Okay. Yeah, so Nanoleaf was outside of my budget, so I just went ahead and 3D printed my own. Nanoleaf is expensive.
No, my camera's funky.
Yeah, but definitely, Andy, you are right. Like, this is exactly the reason why it's good to have something human readable, and I think that would be very advantageous for people managing networks.
But underneath everything, we still would probably use the MAC address as the identifier in the algorithms and anywhere else. It's just that there's like an associated humanly readable name that we can then add on top of it, right?
The question is whether the human readable cannot be unique at the same time, because things like Miniseed and stuff like that, they use the station name by convention. And it would be really nice to have something much shorter than those like 9 digits or how many digits the Mac ID is. It's not absolutely necessary. I think that we can always find a way around it. But I think that if we found a way how to generate, maybe even automatically, a human-readable, unique ID that would be for letters or not letters and numbers, something like that. And that would be somehow that would capture like where the sensor is, in what country, and what's the number of the sensor, something like that. Like I think that would be really, really practical for multiple reasons. But at the same time, like I'm sure that we can find a way how to use the Mac IDs just as well. So it's just an idea, and maybe it is not part of the MVP. Maybe you can just think about it in the future.
I do think it's a very, I think it's an important thing, because as I'm starting to add functionality to the dashboard and be able to, it's easy for me because I only have one sensor, right? So I can just filter by my sensors and find it. But when people have multiple sensors, these MAC addresses, you can't click at it on the map because all the circles are on top of each other on the dashboard map. And then the MAC addresses, you don't know, you can't tell one from the other on the MAC addresses, because so to target one sensor in the dashboard and do something to it, like we kind of need some sort of human readable ID. And we also need to break up the sensors by network, which could serve a secondary purpose. So I do think eventually, I don't know if we can do it in the provisioning process or something, but I think we do want to build, like we talked about before, like some sort of three-letter, three letters that say what network you're in, and then maybe a dash, and then just a number starting at 1 and going up as to what number in the network you are.
But isn't there another way? I mean, I'm just thinking now about particle. So when you provision a particle device, it asks you for a name, and it always suggests something stupid at the beginning. It will say, like red cow, or something that 2 words that that are memorable, and it always gives you an interesting combination. And sometimes I just leave it there, and I know which red cow is kitchen and whatever else. But you have the option to change it into Andy's kitchen, and then that's good enough for me. Because I think if it's all about networks and digits, maybe I don't want that. I want something a little bit more memorable, I'm
all for that. I mean, I like making things. I love when you start a new project on Heroku and it names it something like Blue Savannah or something like that. So we could definitely do that too.
But wouldn't that just be another field in the database for that device, which whilst we still use the MAC address, it's just associated with this other field which people can edit themselves.
Yeah, we could definitely do that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But we should also check that identifier is unique. I think that we want to have a unique, like there's going to be multiple Andys with kitchens. So we don't want to but yeah, I agree. Like this would be nice. But yeah, we need to have that like loop that checks whether it's unique or not, but it can be done.
Yeah, and that would, the port, what actually saves it to the database is what makes the final call is the Node-RED backend. So John would have to put in, I think it would have to be in addition to that, because the dashboard checks your account and, it checks if you have an account, and then in the provisioning process, and then adds, basically answers the provisioning app back whether or not this is an existing account or not, but it doesn't actually add the sensor itself. The sensor comes from the Node-RED dashboard. I mean, the backend.
So yeah, so I'm not sure this is a huge priority, but it would be a nice feature.
Yeah, let me look into that. That maybe we could do it. Yeah, do it on the dashboard somehow, even without doing it from Node-RED.
Okay. In other news, just to update you guys, we've got 50 more sensors going to Puerto Rico right now. They're on DHL now, so there's going to be 90 in total this week. The folks in Puerto Rico, I showed them how to flash devices, and they started doing it really quickly. So that's a proof of concept that actually once you give people the right instructions, it's not complicated. So we're going to have data coming in very soon from that network. There's another 150 which we've now left in China, which are going to be on PCBWay's website, and we're targeting $60 to $70 per sensor, which is almost half of what they were before. But we've saved a huge amount of money by not bringing them to Mexico. But it also means that they're going to be without the board. So hopefully that will encourage people to get sensors. And Gareth, do you have any comments about hardware? I know that you were trying to help John with some issues that he was having.
Yeah, I was just trying to recreate his problem, and I didn't. So it proved that it was probably his hardware. And he has his device falls over as soon as it tries to start the Wi-Fi. So my assumption is maybe the capacitor on the VDD pin of the ESP32, which contains the Wi-Fi aerial, is broken.
Ah, interesting.
So he's going to maybe try changing that capacitor when he's not busy.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a new device on its way to him, so he'll be able to side by side check. But I can't help thinking, because I've never had success running them from my USB on my laptop or my computer. I've always had to have them separately, and I don't know. He says he needs serial, but actually you can tell if it's working because of the colors of the LEDs. So I sort of feel that maybe there's a bit of debugging he can still do there. You know, does it connect when it's connected to a phone charger?
Well, mine is rock solid. It's never browned out.
I forced mine to brown out. You saw the photo where I set up a bench power supply, and I just like capped the amps at about 0.3, and then I started getting brownouts nonstop. And so when I go up to like 0.4, I forgot what it was, they went away. I'm pretty sure it's a power supply problem.
Right. It's possible that you could even go further if we increase the size of the capacitor on the VDD pin. Then it's got more of a reservoir of charge to give when the chip's taking more current than usual.
So you think that it's that we should respec the capacitor?
Only if John's problem proves to be this. I mean, I'm tempted to take the capacitor off my board to see what happens, see if I start having brownouts. But I don't want to do that, really.
Well, we've had a lot of failures from the Mexican batch that were made. And so there's a whole lot of boards I've got which are just, for the bin. And I've looked at them, and in every single case, you can see visually with a magnifying glass or a microscope, you can see where there's a component that hasn't been properly soldered onto the board, usually the tiny ones.
Right.
So like if he can't visually identify that capacitor as being, like the idea that it's a bad capacitor, I don't buy that. They all came from a good batch from Arrow, whatever it was. So my suspicion is that it's either badly soldered or it's something else.
Well, some multimeters have got a capacitance measurement setting. And you can just put probe across the capacitor, measure the capacitance, and look at the circuit diagram and say, what capacitance should I be seeing?
Interesting. Okay.
You don't see just the capacitance of the capacitor you're over. You see all the parallel capacitance. So you need to look at the diagram and work out what capacitance you should see.
Okay.
I've got a very cheap multimeter, so I don't think it does that. But there are capacitance meters as well you can get.
I bought a really cheap one on AliExpress. It's like an automatic multimeter. It does everything. You don't even have to tell it what mode to put it in.
Does it have?
It does capacitance. Yeah, it does capacitance. Right. But I don't know up to what rating. But
okay.
Yeah.
But you should stick it across C7, I think it is. The capacitor at the very top of the board next to the chip, next to pin 1 of the chip. Stick it on there and see what you get.
Okay.
And what capacitance you get, and then we could get John to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, I'll check it out. I'll see if my multimeter can handle that. C7, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a post in the sensor. I've got a diagram posted in the sensor Slack.
Great.
I was going to have a go at implementing an algorithm on the sensor to calculate the velocity and the displacement, but I haven't started yet. I assume you just sum up the accelerations, and that's effectively an integration which should give you the velocity, right? I'm not sure what it will be in, whether it will be in meters per second or something strange.
Also, you need to do some bandpass filtering because there is a lot of noise in the low frequencies, and with every integration, you will just get like a huge low, like especially if you go to displacement, you're gonna have a huge low frequency component that is like gonna be 1,000 times more than the actual signal that we are looking for.
Okay.
You need to do a lot of high pass filtering.
That'll be fun. Do a bit of finite impulse response filtering.
Wait, hang on. So that's interesting. So why would we do this? So velocity would be something that we care about, Václav?
Displacement is, because displacement is proportionate to magnitude of earthquakes.
So you integrate the velocity and then you get the displacement.
Yeah, so it's double integration to displacement, because acceleration is not really telling you much about the earthquake. It can be a small earthquake that is very, very close, very nearby. So then the acceleration is quite high, or the amplitude of acceleration, but it's not carrying that much of energy. So you are trying to find out, when you are trying to find out what the magnitude of an event is, like you need to look at displacement.
So this is interesting. So if we succeed in doing this, does this mean that we can send less data and potentially remove some of the complexity of the detection algorithm in the cloud?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's what I'm doing this in the cloud. So I'm doing this double integration, and this is what the magnitude calculation is based on. It's like a displacement, maximum displacement in a first second, then I take 2 seconds, then 3 seconds, up to 10 seconds, because every second gives you more data, and the relationship between the magnitude and the displacement is slightly different and a little bit more reliable. So that's what I'm doing in the cloud right now, and we can totally do it. I think that this should not be that difficult to do on sensor, and then we don't need to send traces, but we can send only, hey, I have a detection right now at this moment, and the maximum displacement was this and that. So it reduces the message that has several hundred entries or 100 entries for 1 second, or 300 entries, or like how many entries there is like in 10 seconds. It reduces it pretty much to nothing, like to like 2 numbers. Like, so like it really reduces the amount of information sent.
Do we have, Gareth, the processing for this on the ESP32? The resources for this?
Yeah, it's just a low-level implementation of it. The summing bit of it is, the integrating bit is easy. You just add up the accelerations, right? But obviously the bandpass filtering, you just have to implement some, standard digital filters. It's just some adding, dividing. I don't know. I've got a book. I'll have a look.
I think that this is very, like, if the sensor can handle it, and I believe that there is going to be a way, I think that this is very interesting, especially for sites that have bad internet coverage.
Or for this. So I've managed to prototype a cellular ESP32.
Hey.
So this thing now is, this is the board I bought in China, which is the ESP32 board. I think I linked it somewhere. And then here is a sort of ADXL 355. And then I just sort of made a 3D printed case the other day, but this is a sort of weatherproof gland and whatever else. So really, this whole thing, and it's got a battery underneath the board. The board comes with a solar charger and an integrated battery. So anyway, I made this little thing so I can screw it on. But what's great about this is I can run our firmware no problems because it's an ESP32. So this is essentially a node. And the modem works really well. If anyone wants to build this, by the way, I can get you free data on Twilio now because we have $1,000 to play with. And so I connect this to Twilio. All you have to do in this sample code is just write super, where it says your APN for your cellular thing. And anyway, this is now working as an ESP as one of our nodes. So the idea then is if we could use whatever you're doing there to save the amount of data this is sending, this would be an awesome solution.
I really think that we should go that way in the future. I think that right now I'm happy that we are getting the data because that will enable us to train machine learning algorithms for detection and stuff like that. So
of course,
it's not useless. The data that we are receiving now, like it may be unnecessary and we can do a lot more on the edge, on the device. But I think that it's good at this point to collect more data and even collect data that are not earthquakes necessarily. And I'm very glad that the Mexican stations are just sending everything because, it may be 99% of useless data, but like it's still like we can learn from it and improve our algorithms based on that. So I think it's important that we are doing it this way as we are doing it right now, that we are still sending chunks of data. But in future, I think that's the way to go. Like we can really minimize the amount of data sent.
Or rather, a way to supplement it. I think a network should have a variety of different options, different connectivity options.
Absolutely, yeah, I absolutely agree.
Can I ask a question about how the accelerometer works on the sensor? So, if when I just moved the sensor from the lower place that I had it up to my desktop, all the x-axis is now registering like 6 point something or whatnot. So it actually the frame of reference for the axes are actually where you initialize the sensor to. Is that?
No, it does not. It does not really measure displacement in this like very like if you move your sensor from the ground to the table, like this like 1 meter shift, like you can. That's the thing. Like it's gonna get recorded in acceleration, and in theory you can calculate the displacement from this acceleration, but it's gonna be very imprecise, and it's not gonna get captured in there because what gets captured is not like a static shift. It's not like a GPS that measures static shift pretty much, but it measures just practically down to 1 hertz or so. So everything, if you move it very, very slow, less than 1 hertz, it's not really gonna get captured that well on the sensor. So nothing, like in theory, you would be able to reconstruct if you lift it up from the floor to the table, but in practice you probably won't. And it's not gonna get like no static shift in the
because it should just be registering like immediately the movement, right? Because when the velocity, like reaches constant, then you're at zero acceleration.
Exactly. Are you saying you've got a DC offset on one of your traces now that you've moved it?
That's what here. Let me share my screen here because that is something that I was wondering.
If you unplugged it and plugged it back in again, it would recalibrate itself, and the offset would probably go.
Yeah, that offset has. I don't think that offset has nothing to do that you actually displace it from somewhere to somewhere else. Like that's not the signature of that.
Yeah, because if it's it's right next to me here, so it keeps going off. But if you look at the trace,
is it affected by gravity, Vaclav? If you change the orientation, does the effect of gravity change?
I mean, it gets affected by gravity. Like if you flip it, like it gets it is in the if you didn't, I don't know like how this one works. I think it corrects for
so the running average will bring everything down to 0. So even if you tilt it, the whatever axis you've tilted it to, say it becomes the Z becomes Y, the Y will eventually go down to 0 after a couple of seconds because all of our values are relative to 0.
Yeah. But like sometimes accelerometers have that they don't correct for this. So like the vertical one is like has a value of G. So and the horizontal ones have 0. So it is affected by gravity for sure, unless you correct for it. Yeah.
So these numbers. Oh boy, I hit something. So these numbers here, which show, 37 like 39, 37, like that has to be something that is something that is off with the internals of the sensor, and I should restart, right? That's not, those aren't like accurate readings.
No. It would never be like a static shift. Like you would have to apply like acceleration at this value for the whole time. Like that's not like this static component you always filter out. That has nothing to do with real.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's nothing real about that.
Okay. Sounds good. Because I'm just thinking towards trying to put this data potentially on the dashboard, right? Where if it was just a live reading, and so it would have to be basically the difference of all these per where it started from instead of the raw numbers.
You can either demean, or you can detrend, or you can do any kind of a high pass filtering from, let's say, 1 hertz higher, or maybe you can go from 0.1 hertz higher.
Okay.
So yeah, but these statics here don't have any real meaning.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah.
Oh, I did try the, I was having problems getting the app to run on my iPhone 11.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I did try the Grio app, Grio Plus app, and it also had the same problem. I couldn't use it. So I had to use, I has to use an iPad, an old iPad, to get my...
Ah, that's interesting.
Positioned.
So the Grio Plus app is now not working either. Interesting.
Yeah, so it's having permission to getting permission to talk to the Wi-Fi.
Oh, that's very interesting, because what that suggests is that they made another update to iOS, which has sort of made the whatever version I was using of the library redundant. Let me have a look. Touch. Yeah, because what I had suspected was that we had been using some Flutter library for the provisioning and that the Flutter library was out of sync with the more up-to-date iOS library that they've been doing, the Xcode library. So maybe, hang on, let's see. Oh, so it was updated 2 months ago. Yeah, so this is the actual library here that Espressif publish for things. So everything is based on this. There's also an Android one, as far as I know. And then, is this right? Espressif app? I think this is it. I could be wrong. Yeah, and so this was updated a few months ago, which suggests that there has been an update that they've had to stay in touch with. Espressif Smart Config iOS. Yeah. So I just don't want us to have to start creating native apps, because that's a real pain.
No, well, I'll just try it again soon. I wonder, in a few weeks' time, and maybe somebody will have fixed it.
Yeah. So 2 months ago is when they updated it, and I will have to look into the issues to see why they did that.
It's what all our error handling should say, is just check back in 2 months, see if someone's fixed it.
Yeah, I did think I could probably debug it, and then I didn't get very far. So
that's sometimes how Discord does it with their bugs. Check back in 2 months, see if it's fixed then.
Yeah.
Or they say I've escalated it to the developer team, and then nothing happens.
Yeah, I'm looking at the version log here, and there was an important log in 1.3.1, which wasn't too long ago, to do with iOS 13.1.2 Wi-Fi. So, yeah. Let me see if the Flutter any updates since. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I don't think so. Yeah, that's a bit of an issue that we can't get iOS working. So
Well, it probably does work on old iPhones with old levels of iOS, but it doesn't work on new iPhones.
Right. So your old iPad was successful.
With the Grillo app, it was successful, but I'd modified I made some code changes to debug, and I haven't got back to the clean version of the repository yet. So yeah, I might be able to get it to work on the old iPad, but yeah, I haven't yet.
Okay. Yeah. Well, for now, no one's complained too much. In our community, it seems a lot of people are using Android, so no one's complained too much about this, but it could become a problem one day.
I wanted to complain. I have iPhone.
There was no form to complain to, so just have to yell out your window.
Yeah.
I think there's I don't know if it was in the dashboard meeting last week or whatnot, but we were talking about the fact that maybe we if we ever need to build another mobile app, we do it in React Native instead of Flutter, or maybe even rebuild the one we currently have in React Native, because we have a lot more React resources at our disposal than Flutter.
Yeah. So I've just now, as you were talking, opened up React Native Smart Config. And I feel like it's much more. I feel like it's much more up to date. Yeah. So that might be an alternative. Would that be a huge amount of work?
I mean, software development's always like, I can do that in 2 days, and then 3 months later, it's. I don't think so, but I think the provisioning app is not a wildly complex application. I would say it's just that it's been refined so many times that to get it to the state that it currently is in would probably take at least a few weeks of work. But Flutter, for its purpose, Flutter works. It's sort of weighing, just if you want to develop on it, learning Flutter, or at least learning enough Flutter to be dangerous with it, versus taking the time to completely rewrite it in React Native. I've been trying to learn some Flutter so I can add to it myself, but the dashboard's kept me busy.
I mean, so yeah, because whenever I sort of talk to people about what we're doing, they always say, "Oh, so what are the areas that you guys are trying to improve on, or what sort of developers are you trying to attract to the community?" And I just go through everything, but if React Native really was a thing, I could add that to the list. Like, for example, one of the things that I think is holding back our Flutter implementation, and this is just a suspicion, is that it doesn't have all the features. Because when I created the Grillo Plus app, I did that myself, not knowing anything. I just basically took the sample code from Android and also from iOS. I created one for each, and it had all of this sort of error handling built in. Like if you put in a 5 gigahertz network, it will say this is a 5 gigahertz network. It will tell you things that our app doesn't do. And so my suspicion is that we didn't have that built into the Flutter implementation, and that's holding us back.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know where. I can't even really remember back to when we started the application, or I can't even really remember why we chose Flutter in the first place. I guess it was because it was because I think it was a native implementation of it, and that it would easily work on Android and iOS, and now we can't get it to work on iOS.
And Flutter's cool. It's like a cool new tech.
Yeah, it's cool. It's always use the cool new tech, right? Yeah, but anyway, it's something to think about going forward. As long as we can get there's some big flaws in the provisioning process right now, and I think they're holding us back from a end-to-end provisioning process that we can call ready to launch. And that's that's something I'd like to try and solve in the next 2 weeks or so, because it's the the process, I don't know where in the process, but sort of putting some bad records into the database. It also, there's no error handling in the application itself. If you don't complete the onboarding process, there's no way to get back to creating your password on the dashboard. So it's all stuff that, we should figure out a way to handle.
Agreed. So 302 guys, this is towards the end. Anything else we should talk about?
Maybe one more thing. Like Adrian wrote that Twitter microservice. Adrian, how are you gonna subscribe to? Are you gonna subscribe to events from the MQTT and publish those, or what is your plan on that?
Yeah, that's how it works right now. I use the exact same. You gave me a topic on a DM, and I'm using that one right now. It's that IoT events with the region TMP JSON whatever. It's like a sentence. So I'm using that right now. I could make it so that the whole topic string is something that's changeable through configuration, but that part is not the complex part. I mean, we gotta decide on a message that we want to send.
But wait, hang on. Just remind me again. The Twitter would be just sort of. It wouldn't be alerting anyone because we don't know where people are. It would just be saying we detected this here. We detected this here, right? It'd be a list of locations and magnitudes.
Well, it could be whatever we want it to be right now. I think for the most part, this was supposed to be here for kind of to show that it could work end to end, not necessarily for a particular region. That's my understanding of it. So yeah, we could do that. Like I said, it's just the message right now just says, I mean, the first message just said testing, literally just said testing, and then I got suspended, but I got unsuspended today. So we just need to figure out what messaging we have. So we pull the data from the events MQTT broker, topic. Whatever's in there, we can massage it to say whatever we want to do.
If we wanted to get fancy, I've got the code. So you see the Twitter that I put in the chat, the first one. So I've got the code which runs. That one actually still runs in Azure for some reason. But basically, what it does is it takes the last few seconds of a device's accelerations, and it runs them through OBSPy, which is the Python library. It's a Python code. It runs them through OBSPy. It generates a seismogram, an image, and then it posts it to the Twitter API. So if we wanted to get fancy, we could also run that at some point.
Yeah, that was Daniel sent me that link. So I'm down with that too. Although I would say that for us non-OBSPy, I have no idea what these graphs mean when I look at them. So that's something to consider, I think. There's a good GIF we could use. I sent it to Vaclav. It's Forrest Gump running. That probably is appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's the appropriate message.
Okay. I'm being called for lunch, guys. I've got to run.
All right.
Weather
To run.
Okay.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Yep. Have a good one, everyone.
See you. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.